Thank you to everyone for joining today and for coming out this morning to such an important event. We view parents, we as in the YWCA, but also personally, as children's first teacher. And so it's really important to empower you and help you to recognize and validate the importance of your role in your child's life, but also give you some concrete ideas or tools as a framework for some of those behaviors that you can identify with to ensure that you are supporting your child's well-being. So first we're going to start with this video and we're going to discuss afterwards the content.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Was it hard to watch the parent not respond to the baby, like as a parent? I've seen this video many times and I still cringe inside. So this still face experiment I show for a variety of reasons, for what it's teaching, right, for the face value of what we're seeing and experiencing, but also how we can translate that, which you kind of already were doing, into today. And how does that look for ourselves as parents when we're not essentially being attuned, right? When we're not taking the time to attune with our child. And it is the phone that I find often interrupts. Instead of, maybe this experiment of still face, it's often just the phone or a lack of reaction in that regard. And it's important, right? Because our children are looking to us for that responsiveness. And as we saw in the baby, it causes this physiological distress when they aren't receiving that. So let's jump in with nurturing as we're starting to think about these parenting behaviors and how important it is for you to be a responsive parent. The first behavior we're going to talk about is nurturing. So what do we know about nurturing? What do you think of when you hear the word nurturing? Yeah, we have to keep them alive. I do think that is one of our duties as parents, as a baseline. But certainly we want optimal development beyond that, right? So celebrating their accomplishments with them is certainly part of nurturing. Showing affection, accepting the child's emotions, which can be really difficult, right, as a parent. Especially if it is an emotion that isn't one we want our child to be experiencing, or one that we ourselves feel discomfort when experiencing. So allowing them to feel their emotions. Consoling the child when they're upset is part of that. Providing that safe base. Often what I hear from parents and just in general is this idea of, well, they don't do that when at home or at school, or they just do that when they're with me. And part of that is a compliment to parents, and that you are such a trust and safe source for your child that they can divulge different behaviors and really look to you to provide those limits because of that trusting relationship that you have. So as much as it feels like, oh my gosh, why are you having a meltdown when we're trying to leave, or you know, what is the hang up here? You are that safe space for them to kind of experiment and know what is safe, what is expected of them in some ways. Other thoughts about how we nurture our children. And part of up there I have, how do we teach children about emotions, and how are we expressing our emotions? Is that something we feel comfortable teaching children about emotions? I'm getting the vibe of no, because I'm not getting head nods. Is it hard sometimes ourselves to even figure out emotions? Yeah. And part of teaching our children is having that like attunement or awareness to our own emotions, or even like a vocabulary, right, of some of the basic emotions that we can start to name for ourselves and for our child. What are ways that we design and guide our child? How are we creating that environment for them that we were just alluding to that is safe and enriching for them? An opportunity to do that is to collaborate more with the school, or as much as you can. Certainly anything that the school is practicing or doing is great to be doing in the home, and vice versa. Right? The school likes to hear and know like what you're doing that is meaningful for you and your child, because we always should keep a cultural lens of appropriateness too, right, in mind when we're thinking of families and what they feel is appropriate as far as guiding their child's behavior. So we establish routines as part of this. Routines help children just as much as they do adults. They help to lower stress when we know what is predictable for us. So that naturally allows children less stress when they know that. So we guide them that way. Part of discipline is teaching them. The root word of discipline, the Latin word is disciple, which means to teach. And so it's really meant to be a learning opportunity. It shouldn't necessarily be punitive. In that regard is a theory of parenting. I recognize that there's other ones as well. Our expectations of our children, are they age appropriate? Right? And I didn't mean to point at you, but you just brought that up around communication or responding. I apologize. So yeah, what is age appropriate for them? And again, that might depend on culturally how that looks in your family. What are expectations of a child at certain age? And how are we modeling, again, our expression of feelings? This falls into this too, and kind of threads throughout, like how are we showing up? Because they're always watching us, right, for good and bad. So how are we designing and guiding our child? So what does this look like in your household? Or what has this looked like for you? Does your child have chores? Yeah. Okay, so there's a start. Do they have a safe space to explore, learn, and take risks in your house, your backyard? Maybe there's a park, a community resource you go to and utilize. Or how can we create those opportunities if we're not feeling that they're readily available? Certainly maybe space can't allow for that. So where can we go for some of that? What about our expectations of our children? Does that fall into this, how we're guiding their behavior? What we're expecting of them? So really managing those expectations. I often teach about executive functioning, which it's like, can I sign up for next year? It's a really fun workshop. We play more games. But part of that workshop is that we're thinking about how we are interacting and playing with children, but also managing expectations. Because the realization in that in that workshop is that as adults, it's hard to do some of the tasks that we ask children to do. And so starting to really manage what are we asking of them and giving a little more grace to them as we should for ourselves too, right? A good example of that is like our working memory, trying to remember what you're doing, right? Has anybody ever walked into a room and then been like, what was I coming in here for? Or you go to the grocery store and then you come home and you're like, I forgot the one item I needed. And so there's a lot of things that contribute to that stress, everything else. But ultimately, I bring that up to parents as a way to recognize it gets hard for children to remember all the rules and what they're trying to do. And many things can be affecting and interacting with their ability to remember that. Their environment, how they're feeling, stress, right? So that can be a huge part of our designing behavior, and especially when we're thinking of modeling how we're expressing feelings, right? I think it's okay to name our feelings and even to offer when like we messed up or we got something wrong. That can really model for children. And then how are we responding to our child? What responses do you think your child sees you give the most? Are you frustrated? Are you happy? Are you tired? And thinking about like, what is their experience of you when you're responding? We may not like to think about that, but let's be fair. Do we follow our child's lead when we're playing and learning with them? That's a huge one. A teacher just shared an example with me yesterday of playing with sidewalk chalk. And the child like smashed the sidewalk chalk and wanted to play with it differently. And she had, a vision in her head of how the chalk was going to be played with, and she don't want the mess and everything else. And instead of like inserting herself in the situation, correcting, redirecting, or even like shaming the children as if they'd done something wrong, she thought, hold on, let's step back and see like what they're doing with this and what they're creating. And instead allowed for this beautiful opportunity for this child to explore chalk in a different way. And she recognized afterwards that like, hey, that was a learning experience for her to allow the spontaneity of the child, right? And to just not have this response be this negative one, but one that actually embraced and showed curiosity and allowed the child to lead the activity. Like, why not let him play with it that way? So that was just, I thought, such a great example of a lot of things we can do differently with children, just how we even play with chalk, sidewalk chalk. If they're still the age that they want to play with sidewalk chalk, which I think as adults we should still play with sidewalk chalk personally. And so how does that look for you in your home? How are you feeling about the way you're responding to your child and their needs? Because part of that is like consistently reacting to their cues, right? It requires a lot of you and reminds me of like that first video. It's ever evolving, right? As they're growing as complex beings and we're trying to understand them, as they're trying to understand themselves, how are we, helping them to even, have those conversations, right? So it feels safe, or us even to recognize, I'm noticing that, your face is telling me that you're feeling upset, or that maybe something's upsetting you, or you might be angry. But you want to talk about that, right? Maybe even opening up the conversation, letting them know what their nonverbals look like, if that is what they're wanting to communicate with you. And that might just start to help a conversation. And with that, we're also having the opportunity to teach and model empathy, right? So it really does require a bit of growth, right, on our part, to be able to help them truly grow on their part. We have to dive into the uncomfortable or make it become a comfortable thing to talk about emotions. And so it might be a bit of work for us before we feel prepared to have this conversation with our children. But I think you even being here today, right, speaks volumes to all of you as parents, and just even your commitment to come here, your curiosity, your desire to learn more. So you're already on that path and making that effort. What other things are coming up for you with responding? I'm really appreciating the way that you're thinking about this. And leading with your child in play can look very differently depending on what your child's into. And their interests, but it could be asking them, right? Like just getting to know what they're into, taking an interest in that, having them tell you about that, spending time doing an activity that they enjoy doing, I think can show an investment to your child and can be a responsive behavior. And I think it goes back to the relationship with your child too. One would hope that this wouldn't be a complete mystery, or that there's an opportunity to kind of create an opportunity to play with your child. And if you're not finding there's opportunity, or, it can, like, play maybe is defined differently for different people, we can talk about ways to create that too. Is that kind of making sense, or did that?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, communication. It feels like we've been talking about this throughout, but we're actually going to really hone in on specific communication, like how we are using conversations and questions, replying to child's words, reading books, age-appropriate language, things of that nature. So on here we're kind of really using reading in here and thinking about like our nonverbals in addition to maybe like our tone, our pitch, our inflection of things, right? Even back to the chalk story of the teacher, right? Had her tone and expression look different, that may have alerted the children to stop what they were doing versus her having a different reaction and allowing them to play. So, that communication, what does that look like? How are we sounding to our children? Because yes, when it comes to technology, even interfacing with it, it's something to consider. I believe electronics under the age of 2 used to not even be recommended, but I know it's just different, right? And through the past few years, we've used it differently. So that is something to take into account too, and kind of threads back to where we started, right? With that still face experiment. How much are we actually communicating? When I go out to restaurants, or I don't ride a lot of public transportation necessarily, but when I used to, do you ever all notice, or is it just me, that everyone is like generally looking at their phone, even when they're at like a table together, or I'm in an elevator full of strangers? And I get maybe people don't want to talk to strangers, but sometimes I just have the urge to be like, hey, how is everyone doing? Or look up from your phones, enjoy the people in front of you at the table. So I think just even thinking about it in simple terms of like, are we taking the time? And when we're taking that time to communicate, how intentionally are we being and present with like our body and our words and making it that safe space? And so I was looking at you kind of threading it to kind of some of the realizations I think you were having with us. And the last behavior is supporting their learning. So we have that e-learning up there, which I recognize that may have been very difficult. And for some schools, maybe it's still hybrid or they're fully back, but how has that looked, even just adjusting to supporting your child's learning with the fact that they have access or use technology more in their learning? So how do we support learning while we also know these other important things about technology and the importance of interpersonal time? So like balancing that. And in my experience in working with districts and teachers, I don't find that they want time at home to be spent arguing over homework or stressing over homework. And there's a certain amount of time it should take per grade or per subject, but generally, if it's becoming an issue, it's like let's just bring it back to school. But I think the intention is that you want to be involved, you want to be supportive, you want to know what they're learning. But I think that might be an avenue is thinking about, following their lead, like how could I help? Or with that executive functioning, which I love that you mentioned, it might just be like, they're not recalling the directions, or it's just hard for them right then to conceptualize the work or do flexible thinking. It may depend. Self-control, they might need a movement break, right? Like get up and move and breathe. It's frustrating. That's all part of that prefrontal lobe, which is what I want to come back and talk to you guys about next time, because that's a bunch of fun too. But thinking about like, do you enjoy it, right? Are you enjoying teaching them or helping them learn? Do you have learning goals for them, right? So how involved are you in that and collaborating with the school, supporting that process, allowing your child to take the lead, which certainly when they're in junior high and high school, that is the goal for them, to be more in charge of their academics.
Yes, and I'm gonna hang up the jackets, okay? I'm really rushing all the time. I don't have enough time just to sit down with them.
Being a full-time mom and having a full-time job, it's not easy. I always worry, am I doing enough with my kids? Am I doing the important stuff that they need?
Can't imagine what is in here.
It feels really powerful.
You guys.
You already have all it takes.
maybe I just didn't look at it that way because I always want better.
Do you put your feet in them?
No.
No?
I know that I can do it.
Which one is rough?
This one.
It's amazing the little things that we do. We don't even realize we're teaching our kids.
You did it, Mom.
Yay! Good job.
You don't really think of brain development at that young of an age, you know, when you're 3 months old.
No, she-
This is more geared to the birth to 5 crowd, but completely applicable for all ages. That app room, you can sign up for it, and it gives you like brain building activities, though I believe it is really limited to those first 5 years. But the takeaway from that message, regardless, is for all ages, and part of you recognizing the opportunity that you have as your child's first teacher, hopefully as that trusting relationship. And even though majority of the brain grows the first 5 years, we have until their mid-20s, until it's fully grown. But also just the opportunity to create and build relationships, stronger relationships. That's always there in front of you. It just takes that moment to attune your willingness and vulnerability to connect. So I thank you for your time today. I hope that you continue to have a great day ahead of you with your other breakout sessions and workshops. And certainly if you have any questions or other things you wanted to discuss, we can do that as well. But thank you for your time.